Hypothesis. Based on the bone scar results, it will be determined what type of weapon was used based on close observations of the ridges made or not made by the weapon, showing that when forensics look at human remains, they can tell what kind of weapon was used to cause the scarring, leading them closer to a suspect, as well as the angle the weapon hit the bone.
How is science used to solve a crime? First, we need a crime scene. Let's create one.
Worthless human subject to experiment on. Come in.
Open your mouth. I was having a chat with my brother about my project, and he went into talking about fingerprints, how you can't identify two twins apart from each other because they have the same fingerprints, and also when two twins are in the womb, if one twin dies, the DNA from that twin latches on to the other twin, so it's possible for them to have two sets of DNA, which would make it hard for the investigator to find out which one had done the crime. But I decided against this cause because it's hard to get twins to experiment on, unless you order them on the dark web. Also, fingerprints change over time, and are unreliable as evidence. Fingerprinting was used for a long time to identify who was at a crime scene and which weapon was used. Oh no, he's killed himself. After more research into forensics, I took an interest in blood, bullets, and then I discovered bones. Bloodstain pattern analysis is a field used in crime scenes. Forensics can recreate the violence of a crime scene. Using strings, they can determine the point of impact, recreating a narrative of how blood is spattered around the crime scene. Forensics use string to determine point of impact. Perfect. Each blood cell carries a person's individual DNA, making it the best source of evidence. Forensics can use bullets to trace the casing back to the owner's gun. Judging the angle of a bullet hole can determine which hand dominance was used to fire a gun. There's so much that can be learnt from bones. You can find out their ethnicity, their sex, their diet, their age, their identity, their cause of death, time of death, and even if they've given birth. I was researching bones that led to different paths. All were interesting, but I needed to find a topic to focus on. I needed somewhere to start. The history of bones made sense. Galen discovered the starting point of anatomy as we study it today. From experimenting on animals, his mistake was that he applied the experiment of the animals to humans. Galen created experiments to discover the effects of paralysis by using the spinal cord. He was behind the diagnostic discovery of the pulse rate. Galen was the originator of the experimental method in medical investigation, and throughout his life dissected animals in his quest to understand how the body functions. Some of his anatomical and physiological observations were accurate. For example, he proved that urine was formed from the kidney, as opposed to the bladder, which was common belief. His most important discovery was that arteries carry blood. Although he did not discover circulation, Galen was a physician, writer, and philosopher who became the most famous doctor in the Roman Empire and whose theories dominated European medicine for 1500 years. Avicenna was particularly noted for his contributions in the fields of philosophy and medicine. He composed the Canon of Medicine, which is among the most famous books in the history of medicine. He wrote 5 books. The first book covered the 4 elements: blood, phlegm, bile, symptoms, and health and hygiene. The other books covered head-to-toe diseases, and diseases non-specific to certain organs like fevers or pathologies. Avicenna affirmed that bones and cartilages offer support and protection to body structures and vital organs and also facilitate movement. He distinguished between compact bones and spongy cancellous bones. He mentioned that compact bones are made up of an outer cortical bone and central marrow cavity. He classified joints into 4 categories, type 1 to 4. Avicenna stated that the cranium is made up of several bones which vary in density. Avicenna presented factual information on the topography, functional and applied concepts in the musculoskeletal system. Most of his descriptions laid foundations for modern specialized fields, such as clinical anatomy, osteology, myology, neurology and biokinetics. The information written in the 11th century has enhanced the osteological studies and their applied sciences. Avicenna's drawings were interesting, so let's enjoy some together.
Damn, that's an ugly baby. Damn, that's an ugly ass baby. I'm feeling quite concerned. My semen must have turned. Damn, that's an ugly baby. This is just what I feared. Her head is misshapen and weird.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo's interest in anatomy began when he was working for the Milanese benefactor Ludovico. In 1489, his first drawing was a skull. However, because it was illegal and considered sacrilegious to dissect the human body, Da Vinci, while curious about anatomy, did not often have the chance to study anatomy firsthand. In the course of his life, he dissected about 30 diseased and healthy human corpses as a means of discovering human anatomy. Philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle were curious about the body, but they did not dissect it in order to create a realistic model for reference. Consequently, Da Vinci's renderings are remarkably accurate. None of Leonardo's astute observations or drawings were ever published during his lifetime. Due to the taboo about dissecting the body, his notebooks were not really known until 250 years after his death, or popular until 1965. Here are some of Leonardo da Vinci's sketches.
Do you like how I sing a love song? Do you like Vincent van Gogh? I like to walk the streets at midnight. I wanted you to know that I'm really not like this, so lost and in question. So much has been left unsaid. I fill in the blank spots, I guess at the hard parts. Were you like my mom and dad?
The Mystery of the Bog Mummies on Timeline World History Documentaries channel showed how they used forensics to examine an old bog body whose head had been cut off.
They also discovered that it was no accident that only the torso remained.
The body was decapitated in antiquity. You can actually see a cut in one of the vertebrae in the neck area.
Yes.
The cut scars and broken ribs revealed multiple stab wounds. The amount of injuries showed that he had fended himself from an attacker with a dagger, receiving multiple wounds and then stabbed.
Where they cut through the abdomen and you can just see a rib protruding there. The rib was cut. You can see a cut mark in the rib, so that's very interesting.
Closer examination revealed chilling evidence of a terrifying death.
This individual would have died as a result of a stab wound to the chest. And interestingly enough, in his upper left arm, you can see a defense wound. So he obviously went to try and defend himself. Maybe that's an indication that he saw his attacker coming as well. He was facing his attacker.
There were further and more peculiar injuries. Both nipples were sliced away.
The scar could determine the size and type of weapon that was used to murder this man. The neck wound would show what might have removed his head. This gave me the idea of using different weapons on bones, to see if the marks and ridges created can find out what weapon was used. I was curious about the force of an object and what impact it would have on bones. From dropping different objects from different heights, forensics can examine what damage was done to the bones. In research, I found out that different marks, patterns and angles are formed, depending on the force and the angle. The plan was to use 3 different objects from different heights on bones. But we ran into some problems. Without the force of the swing, it was doubtful that there'd be enough damage to conclude an experiment. I was talking to my tutor about my project and some concerns were raised. So a thorough risk assessment had to be made to ensure safety. Many problematic questions come to mind while planning the experiment, such as measuring the speed and force of the swing of an object. Building something that could measure this was too complex, such as a mechanical arm that would recreate a fair and identical trial for the arm swing each time. Could cutting the bone determine the type of blade used? There are many different ways that tools can be used to cut a bone, such as a handsaw, an axe, or a machete. Would the ridges or breaks in the bone show which type of blade or blunt object was used to break the body apart?
Method. First, I intend to use ultraviolet and infrared lights before and after to see if any marks or damage appear before cutting. Second, I am going to record and or take photos before and after throughout for evidence of results. 3. Cut bones wearing appropriate PPE throughout experiment. 4. Weapons: saw, machete, hammer, and something electrical. 5. Redo with other 4 bones for each weapon to ensure accuracy of results. 6. Lights to see damage after. 7. Use microscope to examine. The materials that I will need for this experiment are bones, hammer, saw, machete, electrical tool, infrared light, ultraviolet light, lab coat, face covering, goggles, gloves, steel cap boots, camera, and a microscope. Risk: bones, potential hazard, biohazard, health hazard. It's harmful, getting animal parts in my eyes. To prevent this, use materials from reliable sources, wash materials, wear eye protection when cutting bones or cartilage using preserved materials or changing scalpel blades. If any animal parts get in the eye, flood eyes with water. If irritation continues, seek medical help. Count sharps at the beginning and end of the lesson and carry around in a safe manner. Risk: handheld tools, potential hazard, eye injuries due to flying particles. Hammer may cause impact injuries, damage handles of hand tools, slipping while using, falling from heights. Prevention: inspection should be done before use. Always keep clean, always keep tools in a box, use proper tools, and be aware of surroundings for safety of others. Risk: electrical tools, potential hazard, eye injuries due to flying particles, damage handles of electrical tools, slipping while using, falling from height, injuries due to water or electrical fault. Prevention: inspection should be done before use, always keep clean, always keep tools in box, use proper tools, be aware of the people around, make sure no liquids are around any electricals, don't use if there is any rust or discolour anywhere on electrical equipment. Risk: ultraviolet light. Exposure to UV radiation can lead to skin cancer, or in rare cases, melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer. 90% of skin cancer is caused by UV radiation. UV light can also impact the tissue of your eyes, effectively burning them out and causing a condition called photokeratitis. Prevention: don't use this light for longer than needed and wear PPE, especially goggles. Risk: infrared light, potential hazard. The only hazard is that prolonged exposure to a very high level of infrared could result in a burn. Workers who are exposed to close-up high levels of infrared over many years, such as those working with molten glass or steel, have been found to have increased incidences of eye cataracts as a result. Prevention: wear PPE, especially goggles. Be careful not to have the skin under light for too long.